Why now in Dallas with this move with Nico, Brian?
Well, I think they didn't decide to fire him yesterday. I think they had been moving towards that decision for a while. And, only Patrick Dumont, the owner, or the governor, I should say, knows when he decided. But I think it was boiling over into what looked like was negatively affecting the players on the court. They were dealing with situations in their home arena that made it somewhat of enemy territory. And I think, they've played a lot of home games. I think they've played, if not the most home games in the West so far, nearly the most. And I think they've even got a bunch more coming up. And they were suffering at home because of how toxic the situation had become. And so I really think that, and you would, I can't really say I've ever experienced this or seen this before where a general manager's presence has been, affecting players on the court. But I think that there was some belief that that was the case. I've heard some things, and there's also been some things reported elsewhere. I don't feel on solid ground to tell you exactly what happened, but there seemed to be some indecision within the organization about Anthony Davis's status coming back from the calf injury, and that may have played a role, but I don't think that was a defining factor. I think the owner, Dumont, came to just his second game he had been at this year, and sat there and watched the toxic atmosphere, had a fan come up next to him during the game. The game's going on, and by the way, with all due respect, they're not playing, the Washington Generals out there. They're playing the Bucks. Giannis is out there.
Yes.
And fans are coming up to him during the game to discuss the state of the team. And I think it's clear that young fan was symbolic of the Mavericks fan base. They almost don't care what's going on the court. They only care about the fury that they feel. And so to sort of protect the shield, to limit the damage that is happening to the franchise, I think they felt like they had to do it now. It is very unorthodox to fire a coach on November 11th, but I think that they were trying to limit the damage that was being done.
Yeah, I mean, the fans were vocal. As you pointed out, somebody goes up to the governor and basically says, hey, this is horrible. This has been horrible. Something needs to be done. And I guess they internalized it, or the owner did, governor did. But it all does eventually come back down to, why did Luka have to go, and why did he have to go in the manner in which he went, which is the ultimate pocket listing in the history of pocket listings, Brian.
Yes, exactly.
Why did it have to be that way? And so one of those might be laid at the feet of Nico. The other one is the governor had to greenlight it, and somebody collectively, I imagine, think within the organization that Luka ain't it. We're not paying him, or he's not super maxing. We're not super maxing with him. We don't believe in him. Do we have any more information on that, even months later, Brian?
Patrick Dumont, to his credit, I suppose, has taken accountability, saying this was my mistake. I allowed the trade. I made an errant judgment. He has said this on multiple occasions, and he repeated it in the letter that he wrote to fans yesterday. And I think when it comes to the Luka trade, and I know that asking for nuance is a huge ask, and especially with Maverick fans who are so raw about this still, but I will ask for nuance here. If you could divide it into two decisions, you could make a case for Luka to be traded. I don't think it's a winning case. I don't think it's a strong case. But if you wanted to say, I don't think investing $300 million, which is what they were going to have to invest in him had they kept him last summer, I don't think that's a smart investment. You could make that case. It is not the most insane basketball case I've ever seen. They were concerned about his health. They were concerned about his temperament. I would absolutely not have done that, but you could make a case. Period. New paragraph. You could make a case, not necessarily that I would agree with, again, but you could make a case that trading for Anthony Davis as the prime asset in return for Luka Doncic in a league where size is becoming more important and where your other star player is in his 30s and you need instantaneous, high level of competition, you could make a case that trading Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis as part of the prime part of the package makes basketball sense. Again, I wouldn't have done it, but you could sit in a conference room with a whiteboard and an iPad and say, here's my case. Okay. And if you present it to 10 people, you might get some yes votes. I don't think you'd get 6, but you could get some yes votes. Okay. Period. New paragraph. All right. Now, you still can't make that trade with that process. Okay?
Right.
You just can't do it. You have to get everything from the Lakers. Everything. You have to get the draft picks, the swaps. You have to get Austin Reeves. There's no negotiation. There's no case on this one. And if you say to me, which people from the Lakers organization have, well, we just weren't going to give Austin Reeves, I say, sounds good. Have a nice day. Click. You move on. And if you are still wanting to trade Luka, you look for other options. So we have a problem terribly with the execution of the trade and the process. Now, once that's happened, he's got to sell it. He's got to sell it to his players. He's got to sell it to the fan base. Absolute F- on this. His sales on this to the public was between irrational, irresponsible, and borderline arrogant, and insincere in some cases as well. And that was from the day after the trade. And so you add in that, now we're already upside down. Now Anthony Davis gets there and gets hurt his first game and basically has been hurt the majority of the time since. And so the trade is absolutely not working. Luka loses weight and is competing for the MVP. That's terrible. Kyrie Irving blows out his knee. Absolutely awful. All of a sudden, you are now in a gigantic snowball. And they are throwing gasoline on the fire with some of the things that he kept saying and his sentiment to it. And so what you have is, yes, an idea to trade Luka Doncic, not necessarily the worst decision in the history of the NBA, but everything else after that decision has been handled horribly, and it cost him his job.
And so do we know any more about why it was a pocket listing? Why they did not go ahead and say, if we're trading Luka, then we're going to have to take the slings and arrows locally here for the next week, 2 weeks, knowing that he's on the block, knowing that no one wants him to go. But at least we're going to crowdsource with 29 other NBA franchises and get the best possible yield for him, as opposed to doing it under the table, basically, with one team. Do we have any more thoughts on that or reporting on that, Brian?
I will tell you what has been said, and I will tell you that I find the explanation unacceptable. Okay. What has been said is that they felt Anthony Davis was the player that they wanted. I mean, I would have been like calling the Thunder and asking for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I know they're not going to make that trade, but that's that's the type of calls that you make, right? I would call and ask for Victor Wembanyama. And I know that it will become, Shams within, 24 hours will probably be reporting it. And you'd have to understand that. But and I know that those teams wouldn't do that trade, but that's the kind of calls I'm making, right? They decided Anthony Davis was the guy. They also felt that if they had called around, that it would have gotten public and that it would have undercut the ability to do the trade. Yeah,
I know, but it gets public eventually, and now look at what's happened. People are holding up Fire Nico signs months later. You know what I mean?
This is what I'm saying. Again, if you honestly don't believe that paying a guy who had trouble staying in shape and has a temperamental problem at times, $300 million, that idea, it's not going to get you ejected from any room. People would at least listen to it. Again, I would have said, well, we're still going to give him 3 more years or 2 more years before we do it. We're still going to sign him to that contract. But you would not get laughed out of a room of NBA executives. You would get laughed out of a room of NBA executives if you said that you were only going to call one team, not ask for everything that they had, and prioritized silence over the most important transaction in the history of the organization.
Okay, so then the last one for you on this one, sports talk radio question, Brian Windhorst. Because I'm asking you also to put yourself in the mind of the governor of the Dallas Mavericks. If you asked him right now, Patrick Dumont, if you asked him right now, you can have one of two things. You don't trade Luka at all, or you do actually have your general manager crowdsource it with everybody. It gets out.
Great question.
Which one do you think he would choose, Brian?
God, it's a great question. I don't have an instant answer.
Sure.
I think he would say, if he had to answer in front of any more than 3 people, he would say he wouldn't trade
No
Luka.
trade. There's a receipt. Hold on a minute. I have it right here. Return
again,
policy. Right.
Again, it's not insane to look at this and say, because in the era that we're in the NBA right now, like, the worst thing that you can do is have a player on a massive contract that is below that contract. You're crippled. As a Cleveland Browns fan, you want to avoid, a situation where you have a contract that is untradeable, that it destroys your cap position. So I could see him as still agreeing to trade Luka. It's just, you're calling and asking for Jokic. You're getting told no on the top 5 players in the league. Giannis was involved in trade talks this summer. Okay. Now, I don't know if Giannis would have ever wanted to go to Dallas, but holy Moses, you're calling and asking about Giannis. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's got to be the process. And but no, I think publicly, if he's in front of any group of anybody wearing Dallas Mavericks logo, he's saying, no, Luka would have stayed here for the next 45 years.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.